Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Being Human Now show. I'm your host, Jennifer Locksmith, and today we're going to do something a little different. You're just going to get me today. I suppose you could say I'm the guest. If anyone that watched my first video, my introduction to Being Human Now, which was also a mission statement for the show, I mentioned that I've had supernatural experiences throughout my life, and even up until today, which is something I'm going to be talking about today. And that I would share them with you at some point. So today is that day. I'm doing that. Um, so I guess what I should start with is that I was on the Pork and Bean show with Arla Colette Williams and Michael Harrell about a year ago to talk about my supernatural experiences and that I'd had up until that point in my life. That is on my channel in the post if you're interested in things that have happened throughout my life, kind of the bigger things. I would recommend checking that out. I'm not going to talk about all that over again, except for maybe a few examples. But what I'm talking about today is just what's happened within the past year since I've been on the Pork and Bean show with Arla and Michael. So I guess I'll start with something I did talk about on the show with them because I was kicking myself. It wasn't something I was planning to talk about. But when I was talking to Michael pre-show, he brought up a very interesting story about something that had happened to him with a deceased bird just that day. And it reminded me of something that had happened to me. And he made me realize that this was something actually very interesting as well. And that's something I'd like to share with you. I talked about it on the show, but I'm going to repeat it here. And I'm going to include pictures this time because at the time I completely forgot I took pictures of this incident. Um, so what happened was this was 2 summers ago. And I should say I'm no longer living there, but I was living in Pennsylvania at the time. And the house I lived in, it was lovely. We had a lot of privacy. We were surrounded by trees, which I love. I need trees around to like survive. And behind the house was 13 acres. Next to us was an empty lot of trees. And across the street was also trees, but there's also a park there. But mainly we saw like the parking lot and trees across the street. And then I did have one neighbor to the right. So anyway, that's just the setup because this I did have activity at this property, which I talked about on the Pork and Bean show. So um, I was going outside in the summertime, 2 summers ago, as I said, to water these hanging plants that I had in front of our deck. And I had a ritual every day. I would go over to these hanging plants. And as a lot of people know, you lift them up to see if they even need water. And so I would do that every day. It was my ritual, lift them up to see if they need water. So on this one occasion, I went out and there was something on top of the hook. And initially, I thought it was like a dried up flower or something. So I took a closer look, and there's a dead baby bird balanced perfectly on top of this hanging basket's hook. And I looked at it for a few seconds and made me sad. It's a tiny little baby bird, barely didn't have any feathers or anything, the big eyes. And it was very clearly deceased, and plus it had been baking out in the sun. But I was just I'd never seen anything like this before, and I'm wondering how did this baby bird get here, like perfectly perched here? And so I'm thinking maybe it died and the parents put it out here. It's pretty impressive that they were able to balance it like that. So I took it down and I buried it. I assumed that it came from the robin's nest under the deck, and so I buried it beneath its kin so they would never be apart. And I said a few prayers, and that was that. I thought it was weird. Obviously, I did. I took some pictures because I thought it was so bizarre, and I wanted to show it to people because I do birds do this? I kind of wanted to know what was going on here. And I guess some part of me probably thought there was something more going on because, as I said, there had been activity at the house. Um, and I'm very, very grateful. Tish Paquette has played a massive role for me, having confirmations for me. I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with her this past summer about my experiences, and she confirmed some things for me. And this was one of them that she confirmed that this baby bird was intended as a gift and that I should say thank you. And so I did in that moment, even though it's Like 2 years later, I said thank you. And I'll provide those pictures here for you guys to see. Hopefully, it's not too morbid for anyone. Um, and yeah, so one other interesting thing, since I was on the Pork and Bean show, I literally got done with the show. I went in to talk to my husband, and he was telling us that a lot of the time that I was on the show talking about the experiences on the property and just in my life, throughout my life, um, our dog was just staring at this area of bamboo that we have had in the backyard, just sitting there staring at it, which I also thought was interesting. And I guess I should talk about my first sighting because I've since had a second sighting of a Sasquatch, or what I actually like to call them are the Sabe. But just for public consumption on the show, I call them the Sasquatch because you might have new people coming in listening, and if you say Sabe, a lot of times people don't know what you're talking about. So I talked about my first sighting on the Pork and Bean show, which Arla actually confirmed for me that was a sighting. I wasn't sure that it was because I'll tell you what happened. I was driving home from my parents' house in Maryland, and my husband was driving. I was sitting passenger, and we were driving on this road. It wasn't very big, it was like one lane each way, and there were cornfields on either side. Not much going on around here on this road. And up ahead, I thought I saw someone in, okay, it's the dead of summer too, by the way, and the sun is beating and it's hot out. And I think I see someone in all black with their hood up skating across the road, like from the cornfield across the road to the other cornfield. And I'm thinking, where is this person going? Like, and why are they wearing all black? And I was so confused. And I figured, all right, well, they either have to be coming or going if they're skating. So we're driving. So eventually I'm going to see them, right? I never saw anyone skating in all black. Um, And so I told that story on the show, and Arla goes, "Yeah, that was a sighting. You had yourself a sighting." So that was pretty cool to have that, especially confirmed by her. And so once I found that out, um, I kind of prayed for a second sighting, but that I wanted it to be. I spoke out with my heart and my mind, and then I asked for some specific things. I always say that I don't want to be scared. And I wanted it to be much clearer and closer, um, and so I could like see detail. But I also wanted to feel safe. So I was thinking maybe like I was thinking a car sighting again, that I would be in my car, maybe drive by one on a wooded road or something like that. So yeah, so I'll just say that. Um, but now I'm going to go in chronological order now within the past year since going on the Pork and Meat show. So just keep that in mind, that I asked for that after finding out that I did have my first sighting. So actually, then the evening of the show, after I got off from talking to Michael and Arla, I am driving on the highway going to our local supermarket to get dinner stuff, and the sun's starting to set. And I'm driving, and I just kind of like glance up and look at in this cloud, and I see this bright white light. So initially, I'm like, oh, that's a plane. But then the light was too big to be a plane. And then I noticed, I can't remember if there were three or four, okay, but there were three or four big white lights all in a row. And as I zoomed in on it more, it was a ship. I was seeing the end of it looked like it looks, I couldn't see the whole thing. I was only seeing the end of it, but it was like like the end of a thick rectangle, and these lights were all part of this one, like the end of it, the thick part end of it. And stared at it for like a second, and then it kind of reminded me of a whale diving into water. It just disappeared into the cloud. And I was just, did that really just happen? Did I really just see that? And I was just on the Pork and Bean show talking about my supernatural experiences, and I just saw a freaking UFO go to a cloud. Okay. And I can still remember it very clearly, even now. So that happened. And then like a month later, because I had talked to them, and they had directed me to interview some amazing people who I now call friends, and I'm grateful for them. Michael Harrell being one of them. So I actually had him on to interview about his language lessons of the heart healing modality. I had him on like a month later. Sorry, I vocal fry. Um, and so I was doing homework. I was home alone and I was sitting in my living room. I had language lessons of the heart playing on the TV, and I was going through the healing. I was doing my homework to prepare for my interview with Michael. And my goodness, my heart needed a lot of work. Anyone that's familiar with that healing modality, you kind of talk to different parts of your body and your organs. And my goodness, my heart needed a lot of love and attention. So I was crying a lot. It's not coming out of my nose. I was going through it, but I was healing. So my dog had to go to the bathroom, and it had just snowed, I remember. And so went to the front door to let my dog out. And what we had is we had like, the solid door, but then like an all glass door. So the solid door, I opened that and I opened the glass door, let the dog out front to go to the bathroom and closed it again. I'm just standing there behind the glass door. My dog does his business, my dog's doing his business, and I'm kind of glancing. As I said, across the street, we had woods next to a park. And I'm looking into the woods, and there's this one like small group of trees that between these particular trees, I see this moving, something moving back and forth really fast. And I'm staring into there and I'm thinking, is that a bird? That can't just be one bird. Like it's moving way too fast. Maybe it's a bunch of birds, but they're moving so fast in the trees that seems kind of like dangerous for them. So let my dog back in and I went and I got binoculars. Came back and I got the binoculars up. I'm looking across the street in the woods trying to figure out what the heck is moving so fast back there. And then I started seeing flashes of red. Not like a light, it was like the color red. And so I'm like, okay, maybe there's people back there with red coats on, but it can't just be one person. Maybe there's a bunch of people with red coats on, maybe working on a tree, maybe a tree fell back there during the snowstorm, but I don't see any cars in the parking lot. I'm racking my brain trying to figure out what's going on back there in the trees. And then the color red stopped, like was gone. And then I saw a pine tree branch going up and down like this really fast. And then, mind you, I'm still looking through binoculars. And then all of a sudden, there is a man standing there. It was like a movie. It was like I saw the legs first, and the legs were brown. And initially, I'm still thinking, oh, this is someone back there cutting down branches or something, or I don't know, people back there working. And I'm thinking I'm seeing a man standing in those heavy duty overalls that are usually tan or brown. I believe they're called Cartwrights. And so I'm looking through binoculars at these legs and I'm going up and up and brown, brown, but then the brown continued on the arms and the chest and the neck. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is hair. And by the time I got to the head, I froze because there was a face staring back at me. He looked just like an Australian Origine Man, just hairy. Um, the hair was a chestnut color. 2 inches, 2 inches long over the whole body, including the head, which was round. There was no point to it. There was no hair on the face. The skin on the face was practically the same color as the hair, like very, very tan, like practically brown, as I said. It was like a reddish brown color, same as the hair, practically. And there was no hair on the face except for immediately around his mouth. The hair was white, and it was a mustache connected to a short beard. I think you would call that a goatee. And he was just staring at me. Um, Almond eyes. I don't remember much about his nose. It was very human, voluptuous lips, and he had his body slightly turned. So I was seeing more like the left side of his body, but his head and face was facing me straight on. So it was like slightly turned, but looking at me. He never moved the whole time. He was perfectly still. We just stared at each other for maybe 2 minutes. When stuff like that happens, you kind of fall into like a time warp. I'm trying to think of anything else I can tell you. Yeah, he looked just like an Australian Origine Man, just covered in hair. Um, I don't remember exactly what happened, if he disappeared or if I just like went back inside. I know I went back inside and I just sat down and continued to watch Language Lessons of the Heart while every once in a while just asking myself if I really just saw that. Did that really just happen? And if it did, that's crazy that like Michael Harrell's also into Sasquatch and I just saw a Sasquatch saw a man across the street. That's wild. And I just didn't know if I could trust myself. Did I really just see that? And so at the time, I prayed for confirmation. And I just kind of went on with my life. I didn't tell anybody about it because I just felt like it sounded so crazy. So I'm so grateful that I did get confirmation. As I said, I had the opportunity to talk to Tish Paquette this past summer on the phone about my supernatural experiences. And so I told her, she's one of the first people I told about the sighting I had of this Sabe man across the street. And as I was describing him to her, the entire time Tish is going, yup, yup, yup. And I just had to laugh and it was just awesome. It was a really awesome moment for me to get that confirmation. And now I know um what a special moment that was, that he showed himself to me like that. And I also want to say, looking back, I feel like he was happy I was healing and he wanted me to keep healing. And then even the way his body was positioned, because as I mentioned before, I there were some things I listed in my second sighting that I prayed for that I wanted. And he checked all the boxes, even down to making sure that he wasn't the least bit intimidating, the way he had his body positioned. I mean, if he had been like straight on, he's just staring at me straight on, it's like he's squaring me up or something, like that might have been a bit intimidating. He didn't do that. He had his body slightly turned, so I was seeing him more from the left. He was facing me straight on. Um, and then just some neat little things have happened. I'm a big fan of seeing people's pictures of their little gifts that they get. Maybe some of you are into that, maybe you aren't, but I'm going to tell you about them anyway, and I'm going to provide pictures here. I get feathers a lot as gifts. They may not necessarily be from the Sabe people, but they could be from, your guides or just spiritual friends, angels. Um, But I remember this one day, I was having a bad day. I was just like really down. And my husband and I were doing fire pit. And I remember he was in doing the dishes. I went out to prepare the fire pit and walking around back and forth between the wood pile and getting everything ready. Um, and so we finally come out, we're standing there, and there was no way I would have missed this feather because it was literally on the trail that I'd been walking to like get stuff back and forth. And I look down for dog poop when I'm walking. I was standing there, and all of a sudden there is this tiny little, I believe it was an owl feather. I'm not familiar with what feathers are belong to what birds, but I'm pretty sure it was an owl feather. I'll provide the picture. And it was just right, like I just turned, this right behind me where I would have been walking numerous times before, just like half an hour earlier. So that was really cool, and it was just laying on top of the grass, pristine. So that made me smile, and it made me feel like everything's going to be okay, even though I was feeling like not having a good day. And then I'm staring into the fire pit. We've got the fire going, and there is a log looking right back at me. There's a log that's in the shape of a heart. I realized. And so that just made me chuckle and completely pulled me out of my bad mood. So that was really cool. And I don't believe in coincidences or mistakes. So I do feel like that was just a loving gesture given to me that day. And so, as I mentioned, I don't live in this house in Pennsylvania anymore. We moved this summer. And um, so that was hard. The hardest thing about it was actually leaving the 13 acres behind us, the woods, because I do feel like they were there. And I just love trees and I love the woods. And I had a lot of special moments there. And I'm about to tell you about two more special moments because I spent a lot of time outside and I was saying goodbye to the woods. Um, like before we moved, it was a couple days before we moved for good. And I was saying a tearful goodbye and just like kind of crying and wondering, like what's going to happen next? We're moving. Are we making the right decision? Even though I knew we were. And all of a sudden, a doe comes out, and I see these two baby deer with her Bambi looking babies. and they're running around playing in the woods, jumping over the logs, chasing each other, and she's just standing there. She's not bothered by me. Um, and she's kind of looking at me, watching her babies, and they're running around playing. And I really just feel like that those were not just normal deer. I feel like they were more than that, and I feel like they wanted me. Were letting me know everything's going to be okay, and they did. I stopped crying and I was laughing and smiling, and so that was really magical. And then the last day at the house, I was again crying out back, saying goodbye, and I was talking to the Sabe that I know are there and telling them I miss them. And a doe just comes walking out, a big doe just comes walking out into the clearing of the woods, stops, turns and stares at me for a few seconds, and then she looked forward and she just kept walking. And that was literally like me saying, I'll miss you. I hope you come visit, you know. And I just felt like that was also more than just a deer, it was an acknowledgement. Um, yeah, so then since I moved here, I'm like tearing up. So since I've moved here, I've gotten some feather gifts in a really interesting place out front of the house. I don't always take pictures of the feathers and gifts I get. But I will provide you with the ones I took. So I will provide the pictures I can. But it's always in by this one plant out front of the house. And I've gotten feathers there before. They're sticking straight up out of the ground. I don't put them like that. That's how I find them. And this one occasion, I got three feathers together. I think I put it on Facebook. And I believe it was a tailed hawk feather, a crow feather, and I have them right here. I think crow feathers and a red-tailed hawk feather. And then, so I'll provide a picture of that here. That was pretty cool. And I snapped that picture again before I touched them. That's how they appeared. They were shown to me. And then the next day, there was another little feather. They're smaller. I think that might have been an owl feather. And I'll provide those pictures. So that's really cool. And those are just two examples. I've gotten other feathers in that same spot, just like that, sticking straight up out of the ground. So that's really cool. And then what else? So I'm kind of winding down here as far as like the bigger stuff that's happened this past year. So I interviewed an amazing woman, amazing psychic named Jan. I don't think she'll mind me talking about this. And before I really got to know her, if a guest is willing to, I love to talk to them on the phone before I interview them, to build a rapport. And usually we wind up becoming friends. Sometimes we do, sometimes not. But it's just neat to get to know each other and kind of break the ice. So Jan and I agreed that we were going to do that. And I was out in my car because sometimes I like talking to people in the car because it's very private. And so I'm trying to think, all right, where can I go to talk to her? So I thought of this one parking lot. And I knew they had like some pretty flowers there. But what I didn't realize is that there's like a tiny little park there. So I pull in, I park next to the park, and in front of me, I see these white things. And I still had a few minutes to spare before the agreed upon phone call time. So I get out, go walking around to look at these pretty bushes and this area of these white things in the ground. And I go over, and it's a fairy ring, basically. They were mushrooms, but it was so strange because they were in like a circular pattern. Actually took a picture of it. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a fairy ring in front of me where I parked. So I took a picture of it, get back in the car to talk to Jan, and we're just talking about things we want to talk about for the show, but then also she's telling me about herself, I'm telling her about myself. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Jan blurts out, "You've got fairy DNA." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Yeah. You're only the second person I've ever met to have fairy DNA." And I asked her to elaborate shortly after, and she said, "Yeah, it's also like a spiritual thing too, um, an elemental connection. I don't know. I don't know. I know how crazy it sounds, but I'm just telling you guys what happened. I don't know. I pray for more clarification and more information. But yeah, so that's very interesting. And maybe that's a puzzle piece for somebody else listening. I don't know. But I think it's important we all share our truths. right now, especially, it's time. So that's another reason why I finally came out and decided to talk more about what happened to me this past year, that it was important. I mean, I'm having people on to talk about their experiences, and here I am sitting on a pretty awesome sighting I had last winter. So I'm walking my talk, and here I am. And actually, one of the last things I want to talk about is just something small, but I thought it was kind of cool that I was talking to a friend outside and telling them what I just told you about this fairy DNA phone call. And, oh my goodness, I wasn't, if they had heard of anything like this, I was talking to my friend, and I turn around and there is like a pristine, gorgeous big feather sitting on top of a woodpile behind me. And I just took that was confirmation and a gift and encouragement. And somebody was happy that I was talking about this. And so that was pretty cool. So I'm going to provide a picture of that too. Even though I will say I did get a kitten this summer as well, named Sage, and she did get to my feather gifts. I had them hanging on the wall, and she got to them. I actually had to put them back together, but they are, some of them, a little worse for wear. They're not as pretty as they once were, but that's okay. She blessed them with her spittle, and I adore her. It's okay. So, yeah, so those are some of my experiences from the past year. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the Pork and Bean Show is in my channel post on my YouTube channel, and I think I posted it on Facebook as well. But I'm going to put it in the show notes just for convenience's sake. If anybody's interested, I told you guys I'd tell you about my experiences, and those are pretty much the big experiences in my life up until now. All of this. So thank you for listening. I am going to end with a reading because I think it's really fitting for right now. Get a drink of water. So this one's kind of a lengthy one. There is a shorter version, but I feel like this one's just so beautiful and in depth. I didn't want to cut it short. And as I said, I feel like it's just so fitting for right now. And it's a reading by one of my favorites, Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Now, I'm going to read what this is real quick. So this is the original title to what I'm about to read is called A Letter to a Young Activist During Troubled Times, with the subtitle, Do Not Lose Heart, We Were Made for These Times. All right, so this is the complete and total letter. It's really beautiful, I think. Excuse me. And I'm going to share this and then I'm going to close out. Okay. And again, this is by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Do not lose heart. We were made for these times. I have heard from so many recently who are deeply and properly bewildered. They are concerned about the state of affairs in our world right now. It is true. One has to have strong cojones and ovarios to withstand much of what passes for good in our culture today. Abject disregard of what the soul finds most precious and irreplaceable, and the corruption of principled ideals have become, in some large societal arenas, the new normal, the grotesquerie of the weak. It is hard to say which one of the current egregious matters has rocked people's worlds and beliefs more. Ours is a time of almost daily, jaw-dropping astonishment and often righteous rage over the latest degradations of what matters most to civilized visionary people. You are right in your assessments. The luster and hubris some have aspired to while endorsing acts so heinous against children, elders, everyday people, the poor, the unguarded, the helpless, is breathtaking. Yet, I urge you, I ask you, gentle you, to please not spend your spirit dry by bewailing these difficult times. Especially do not lose hope. Most particularly because the fact is, we were made for these times. Yes, for years we have been learning, practicing, been in training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement. I cannot tell you often enough that we are definitely the leaders we have been waiting for, and that we have been raised since childhood for this time precisely. I grew up on the Great Lakes and recognize a seaworthy vessel when I see one, Regarding awakened souls, there have never been more able crafts in the waters than there are right now across the world, and they are fully provisioned and able to signal one another as never before in the history of mankind. I would like to take your hands for a moment and assure you that you are built well for these times. Despite your stints of doubt, your frustrations in a writing all that needs change right now, or even feeling you have lost the map entirely, you are not without resource. You are not alone. Look out over the prow. There are millions of boats of righteous souls on the waters with you. In your deepest bones, you have always known this is so. Even though your veneers may shiver from every wave in the stormy royal, I assure you that the long timbers composing your prow and rudder come from a forest greater. That long grain lumber is known to withstand storms, to hold together, to hold its own, and to advance regardless. We have been in training for a dark time such as this since the day we assented to come to Earth. For many decades worldwide, souls just like us have been felled and left for dead in so many ways over and over, brought down by naivete, by lack of love, by suddenly realizing one deadly thing or another, by not realizing something else soon enough, by being ambushed and assaulted by various cultural and personal shocks in the extreme. We all have a heritage and history of being gutted, and yet remember this especially. We have also, of necessity, perfected the knack of resurrection. Over and over again, we have been the living proof that that which has been exiled, lost, or foundered can be restored to life again. This is as true and sturdy a prognosis for the destroyed worlds around us as it was for our own once mortally wounded selves. Though we are not invulnerable, our risability supports us to laugh in the face of cynics who say fat chance and management before mercy, and other evidences of complete absence of soul sense. This, and our having been to hell and back on at least one momentous occasion, makes us seasoned vessels for certain. Even if you do not feel that you are, you are. Even if your puny little ego wants to contest the enormity of your soul, the smaller self can never, for long, subordinate the larger self. In matters of death and rebirth, you have surpassed the benchmarks many times. Believe the evidence of any one of your past testings and trials. Here it is. Are you still standing? The answer is yes, and no adverbs like barely are allowed here. If you are still standing, ragged flags or no, you are able. Thus you have passed the bar and even raised it. You are seaworthy. In any dark time, there is a tendency to veer towards fainting over how much is wrong or unmended in the world. Do not focus on that. Do not make yourself ill with overwhelm. There is a tendency, too, to fall into being weakened by perseverating on what is outside your reach, by what cannot yet be. Do not focus there. That is spending the wind without raising the sails. We are needed. That is all we know. And though we meet resistance, we more so will meet great souls who will hail us, love us, and guide us. And we will know them when they appear. Didn't you say you were a believer? Didn't you say you pledged to listen to a voice greater? Didn't you ask for grace? Don't you remember that to be in grace means to submit to the voice greater? You have all the resources you need to ride any wave, to surface from any trough. In the language of aviators and sailors, ours is to sail forward now, all balls out. Understand the paradox. If you study the physics of a water spout, you will see that the outer vortex whirls far more rapidly than the inner one. To calm the storm means to quiet the outer layer, to cause it, by whatever countervailing means, to swirl much less, to more evenly match the velocity of the inner, far less volatile core, till whatever has been lifted into such a vicious funnel falls back to earth, lays down, is peaceful again. One of the most important steps you can take to help calm the storm is to not allow yourself to be taken in a flurry of overwrought emotion or despair, thereby accidentally contributing to the swall and the swirl. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some small portion of this poor suffering world will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding to, adding more, and continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce, and to show mercy towards others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would help to calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. There will always be times in the midst of success right around the corner, but as yet still unseen, when you feel discouraged. I too have felt despair many times in my life, but I do not keep a chair for it. I will not entertain it. It is not allowed to eat from my plate. The reason is this. In my uttermost bones, I know something, as do you. It is that there can be no despair when you remember why you came to earth, who you serve, and who sent you here. The good words we say and the good deeds we do are not ours. They are the words and deeds of the one who brought us here. In that spirit, I hope you will write this on your wall. When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. This comes with much love and prayer that you remember who you came from and why you came to this beautiful, needful earth. And with that, I'm going to end the show. I love you all very much. I'm grateful for you. I appreciate you listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye.